Hey everybody, it's me, Sung1, and today I'm going to be talking about some more anime. So previously I did like 5 favorite anime of all time, but someone asked me to talk about anime that came up before the year 2000, which was interesting because most of the stuff I've seen is in the 2000s. So I actually had to think about it, like what are some older shows, and some of these are started right before 2000. But I'm including them anyway because I like them. Yeah, here are some older, not super classic, but some ones from the late 80s and late 90s. So our first one, let's just get this out of the way. One Piece. The One Piece anime started in 1999, which is fucking crazy if you think about it. And, in my top favorite anime video, everyone was like, what? Where's One Piece? Because, obviously there's a big One Piece wall back there. I'm a big One Piece fan. And I actually have a very interesting kind of relationship with One Piece. Back when I was a teenager, I didn't really get into One Piece. I was into Naruto, I was into Bleach, but One Piece, I read up to Skypiea, and I enjoyed Arabasta and some of the stuff. But Skypiea, there was specifically a character named Satori who went ha 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 in the anime, and he's just this big ball guy. And I was like, this is fucking dumb, and then I stopped. Because for some reason, I just wasn't as invested in it as other stuff. But then, as the years went on, I would hear about One Piece spoilers, and there's actually a very big spoiler in the halfway point, and a lot of shit happens in the arc before that, too. And when I heard about that stuff, I was like, oh dang, that shit sounds pretty legit. What I decided to do was watch the anime, because I had read the manga before. I watched the anime, and I actually got into it a lot more, because it helped that I knew about kind of what was going to happen in the future, but also having the voice acting and the animation kind of helped me get into it more. And so I started from the beginning, went all the way through, caught up to where I knew about, and caught up with the anime. And then, so I didn't really read the manga that much, until Dressrosa, because if you are a One Piece fan like me and you watch the show, you know that the show tends to drag, especially after the halfway point. Toei loves to pad it out. The animation has gone down quite a bit in terms of quality, so it's kind of frustrating to watch. And in Dressrosa, which is a later arc, I got so fed up with it that I finally decided to start reading the manga. And so now I read the manga, and I'm fully caught up with the manga, and I watch the anime still, because, I love the voice acting, and sometimes they do a good job with the animation. So, let's talk about why One Piece is good. One Piece seems overwhelming and vast, and and it is. It is a very long show. But what I like about the show is it's very well planned out, actually. Oda is a very good writer, and he's very good at setting things up and having them have huge payoff later on. He'll introduce a character or mention a character in episode 50, and in episode 400 you're like, holy fucking shit, he planned all this out. And especially at this point where the manga is, and even the anime at this point, there's so much world building that goes on, and so many different factions and stuff, that it just becomes a very interesting political environment for the show. Lots of backstabbing and teaming up, and it's very, very interesting, and you're always wanting to see what's going to happen next in that regard. The main cast of characters, the Straw Hats, are just lovable. And Oda's very good at writing different types of characters. A lot of his characters are very goofy, but some of them are very sinister and very, or some are very pragmatic. So he's good at writing a lot of different types of voices, types of personalities of characters. It's definitely a show where the more you put into it, the more rewarding it becomes, because that halfway point is some of my favorite stuff of the whole show ever. The stuff that's going on now is fantastic, but you need that context of what happened before to understand it all. So, if you have never watched One Piece, the first couple arcs are a little weak. There's an arc called Arlong Park, which I think is very solid, and at that point I was pretty much on board. And then there's an arc called Skypiea that's a little rough, but after that it's pretty much smooth sailing in terms of quality. Really emotional, cathartic scenes, really just heartwarming stuff, some really just blood-boiling great fights. I do think it's one of the finest shonen out there, and I think there's a reason for it. He sets up really fun, contained arcs, and yet the ramifications and the sort of world building he goes off of these arcs into the grander scheme really builds up and really pays off. So check out One Piece. I know it's one of the biggest things out there, and you're like, ugh, One Piece, whatever, but I do think it's fantastic, and there are some great characters. It's good shit. It's about pirates, but it's about so much more than pirates. Going in a similar vein, in terms of shonen, a very good anime that started in 1999 was Hunter x Hunter. And I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about the remake, which was in 2011, which I think is excellent. But let's talk about Hunter x Hunter in general. So Hunter x Hunter follows a boy named Gon, and he wants to find his dad, who became a big hunter. And hunters, in their world, they're basically just like, if you get a hunter license, you can do cool shit. You can be like, get allowed into like, to do stuff that normal people don't get to do. You get, special access, special powers, and like shit like that. So Gon wants to become a hunter so that he can find his dad and do cool shit. And that's how it starts. Hunter x Hunter is an interesting show because it has I personally think, very interesting mind game kind of like conflicts and fights. Instead of just going out like a fist pump, I mean, there's some good old fashioned fist punching and stuff, but a lot of it wraps around like, mind games and trying to phase out the other person and trying to, incorporate your abilities to their best advantages. Every arc is very different. I might even say maybe a little bit too different. There's a little bit of a disconnect, but the characters are interesting. It's a very dark show, actually. And I think the 1999 original version feels a little darker and grungier than the 2011 remake. And I kind of like that about it. Although the original anime has a lot of filler in it that is kind of dumb. But it also, I think, does some scenes better than the 2011 version. But the problem with the original anime is that it cuts off after the Greed Island arc. Whereas the remake went past it and finished the Chimera Ant arc, which, let me tell you about the Chimera Ant arc, that's a whole nother topic. Really fun, interesting cast of characters, a lot of fucked up shit goes on. Some nice action, some nice suspense, and it goes in ways you wouldn't expect a shonen to go, if that makes any sense. Like it like wraps up stuff or does things that always surprise me. Other shonen anime would like definitely do it this certain way, whereas Hunter x Hunter just kind of does its own thing, which I like. Now let's talk about the Chimera Ant arc, which is I think it's a fucking phenomenal arc. I would almost argue it's kind of you could just watch that and that'd be an amazing show on its own. But it has these Chimera Ants are these like, animal-like monsters who fucking eat people, and it turns really dark, really gruesome, and the stakes get super high all of a sudden. But it also features some of the most empathetic and interesting characters. Gon and Killua, his friend, kind of become almost like secondary characters in this giant conflict between these very like powerful forces. I think it's a very, very phenomenal arc, and almost is like a reason to watch the show in itself. Because the world of Hunter x Hunter is very interesting. Having this world of society of hunters, and they all like special abilities, like Nen abilities, and there's kind of like a hierarchy in this world, and it's interesting watching them kind of play with that. He does a lot of interesting shit, because with Nen, it's basically like, you can do whatever you want with this energy stuff, and all the characters have very interesting, wildly different abilities. So it's a shonen, but kind of with more of a cerebral twist, in my opinion, and it's very dark compared to other stuff. One Piece can get dark, but is pretty upbeat and go-lucky, but Hunter x Hunter, especially in later arcs, gets pretty fucked up, and I like that about it. Alright, here's a solid one. It premiered in 1999, Great Teacher Onizuka. Great Teacher Onizuka follows Onizuka, who used to be this tough kind of street thug, gang member kind of guy, and he decides, he's gonna quit, and he's gonna become a high school teacher. He's assigned to this class of shitheads, these like very unruly kids who like, fuck with their teachers in the past, and Onizuka whips them into shape. It's very satisfying to watch him because he's kind of like this tough guy, he's very funny, but he's very like just kind of like, I can beat the shit out of people, and I can He's kind of a pervert. So they're like, who the fuck is this guy? Because they're kind of like snobby, kind of like upper class kids, most of them. But he totally wins them over, and it's very gratifying as he helps these kids. He helps like a kid who gets bullied a lot, and it's fun watching him interact with these kids and kind of help them stop being shitheads and they start to love him, and he starts to love his class. It's very funny, and sometimes very touching, and a badass kind of like high school sort of comedy / drama show. Here's one that premiered in 1986. This is Maison Ecoku by Rumiko Takahashi. I haven't read the manga, which I think is different, but basically the concept of the show is this kind of bum, this like guy who doesn't have a job, Godai. He comes to this kind of like house where he meets the manager of the house, Kyoko Otonashi, who's a babe. He kind of is into her, and he's like her tenant, and there's all these other wacky tenants, and it's basically a romantic comedy kind of show. Totally forgot to mention that. Notice that while editing. She's a widow. That's a big part of the show because it's her dealing with like, the emotions of her past husband and this new guy in her life. Anyway, I thought I should add that in. It's a very comforting show, I think. I like that it, unlike, I like Rumiko Takahashi's other work, but Maison Ecoku feels more adult because the characters are adults. And while the show is full of all sorts of, misunderstandings and antics and stuff like that, the characters handle themselves in mature adult ways. Whereas, compare like Ranma or Inuyasha, they're like fucking yelling at each other all the time. Godai really respects Kyoko, and Kyoko is fond of Godai. She kind of like, almost like in a motherly way, because he's kind of like a bum. But it's very satisfying watching Godai kind of shape himself into a better man, because he's kind of a bum in the beginning, but he decides he wants to better himself because he wants Kyoko's affection. So it's very satisfying watching this kind of adult relationship form and mature as they become, fonder and fonder of each other, despite some romantic triangle shit going. It was a show I could just, grab a bowl of cereal and just watch and just enjoy. It was just a very enjoyable show for me. I really loved the main two characters. I loved watching them fall in love with each other. Two adults, romantic. It's good shit. And finally, this premiered in 1988, Legend of the Galactic Heroes. I fucking love Legend of the Galactic Heroes. Basically, it's a story about two sides, the rebels and the Empire, and they had a century-long history together. They've been at war for over 100 years, and the rebels are a democracy, and the Empire is basically a dictatorship with a Kaiser and everything. And it follows two main characters, Yang Wenli, who's a officer in the rebel army, and then Reinhard, who is the son of a girl who the Kaiser marries, basically. Damn it, not her son, her brother. What the fuck was I? Okay, anyway, so he is her brother. It's a very, very well written, intelligent show. It's all about kind of the conflicts not only between the two sides, but also Yang and Reinhardt sort of maneuvering through politics and that kind of stuff. Yang is very disillusioned. He's a genius, a tactical genius, but no one ever listens to him in the higher ups, and so he thinks war is just a waste of time. He just wants to get by, but he finds himself in a position of he gets some big victories and he starts to go up in the ranks, and so it's kind of he's trying to save people because the bureaucracy and their government is a little corrupt. So he's trying to just do as much good as he can. Reinhard hates the Empire, but is an officer in their army, and his goal is basically to overthrow the Kaiser because he holds a grudge against the Kaiser for basically the Kaiser kind of took his sister to be his girl, and Reinhard's fuck that guy, and so he secretly wants to overthrow the Kaiser. It's an extremely well-developed universe. The space battles are really fun to watch because it's basically watching fucking geniuses go at it and doing dope-ass tactics and just outsmarting each other. The level of detail, there's literally 2 episodes or so where it's documentaries showing the history between the two sides, which sounds intimidating, but let me tell you, it's actually very fascinating. There's tons of characters with so many different motivations. It's like space Game of Thrones, basically, because there's so much backstabbing, maneuvering, political maneuvering, and just, you know, characters die, and there's all this kind of like political intrigue. It's really, really entertaining to watch. It may sound kind of like dry and like kind of overwhelming, but no, it's really engaging once you're in it. I got totally sucked into it. And what I really like about the show is that even though one side is a democracy and one side is a dictatorship, there is no good guy, bad guy. Like the democracy has very corrupt government officials who are totally fucking rotten, and the Empire has some very noble people in it, who are just trying to, you know, do what's right for their country. So there's a lot of morally gray stuff going on. I think it's one of the most intelligently written anime of all time. There's shit that happens in it that fucking pierces my heart. It's so interesting when you get to a point where you're like watching a space battle unfold and you don't want either characters to die because you are invested in both characters and both sides of the conflict, which I think is a strong point of the show. The scope of the show is huge. Like what I described in the beginning is just like the very beginning. Like so much shit happens. It's so just, I think it's an achievement in anime. So definitely check out Legend of the Galactic Heroes. It's fucking great. Alright, that was 5 anime before 2000. So, yeah. I hope some of those sounded interesting to you. And yeah, maybe I'll do more stuff like this. I could talk about anime forever. So, maybe I'll do some more of these in the future. But I will see you all next time. Goodbye.